The 2026 Pokemon season is fully underway now, with League Cups and League Challenges happening all over the world, as the metagame looks to stabilize from the crazy events that happen at NAIC and the introduction of destined rivals into the metagame. But before we kick things off in the Frankfurt and Monterrey regional championships, we have the final tournament of the 2025 season to get through, the Pokemon TCG World Championships in Anaheim. The brand new Black Bolt and White Fleur sets just came out and will be legal for the World Championships. They both bring a plethora of cool and interesting cards that, while none of them offer a truly brand new competitive deck, there are so many new additions to decks that power them up even further. Whether it's the mobility of Herballoon, the search power of Hilda, or the power of Jellicent DX, many familiar decks got powerful upgrades that we are seeing a big shakeup in the metagame and viable decks that I'm sure will please many people watching. So, in today's video, we will be talking about the metagame and how the tiers have shifted with the release of the new set in the online tournaments and with the help of the Japan National Championship tournament results. Don't forget that you can watch videos 24 hours earlier if you become a channel member by following the link in the description below. This kind of support helps me continue to create content like this, so please consider becoming a channel member if you enjoy the content. Starting off in Tier 4, we have a wide array of decks which are a combination of powerful decks that can't really compete at the moment. First, we have Slacking EX, which many people tried to make work with the release of the Team Rocket's Watchtower, which shuts down colorless Pokemon abilities, meaning Slacking EX is no longer hindered by its own Born to Slack ability. Unfortunately though, the best supporting Pokemon for it, Noctowl and Pidgeot EX, would also be shut down, so the anti-synergy of the deck means that even though sure, you can deal 280 damage for 2 energy, the deck just isn't good enough. Next we have Toadscroll EX, which I'm sure many will question given Ray Chen's amazing runs both at Portland and NAIC with it. However, the biggest issue it faces right now is the explosion in popularity and success of both Gholdengo EX and Ethan's Typhlosion decks at the top of the metagame. Both of these are almost auto losses for the deck, and therefore it seems like this new set has completely taken away all the momentum the deck gained from previous tournaments. Then we have Rocket's Mewtwo EX, or the Rocket archetype, which I myself rated quite highly before NAC, but as results have shown, the deck is all show and marketing and it has no actual power to stand on and is much worse than other basic based decks such as Raging Bolt EX. Perhaps it will get better in the future with new sets or the next rotation, but for now it remains a fun deck that is not competitive at all. Next, we have Walls based on Milotic EX, which remains a deck that is annoying to play against, but is terrible against two top tier decks, Grimmsnarl and Gardevoir, and thus has no real value in a competitive setting as there is no way to effectively wall either of those two decks, even if it can do well against other decks in the top tier. And finally, we have Walkthrough Meal, a fun new deck that got boosted by Ignition Energy and Hilda as ways to become more consistent and power up more reliably than with just Reversal Energy. Unfortunately though, the coin flips and the fact that any multi-KOs really make the deck struggle means this deck is likely one to just keep for the ladder when you want to annoy other people. So now let's move on to Tier 3, where the real decks are. Starting off with our Charlatan EX, a deck that with the Poison package was doing quite well in the beginning of the Journey Together format, but since then has lost its edge and is now combining with the Team Rocket's Venture Bomb and Monkey Dury as a way to get a little boost in damage to help our Charlatan's Metal Defender reach for higher numbers and also perhaps target other Pokemon on the bench. Thanks to Adrenabrain, whether you flip heads or tails doesn't matter too much since you can send the damage to your opponent either way. This is a powerful deck, but the lack of a drawing engine and susceptibility to Iono keeps it in Tier 3 for now. Next, we have Zoroark EX, which started off slow when it came out, but was doing very well right before NAIC and Destined Rivals. The release of Shaman seemed like it would put a big halt on the deck, but that didn't stop it from making it all the way to the top 8 at NAIC. I definitely would have ranked this deck higher thanks to its great Gardevoir and Dragapult matchups, if it weren't for the fact that it has a horrendous Gholdengo and Grimmsnarl matchup as well. The rise of Gholdengo and continued dominance of Grimmsnarl is what is keeping this deck at bay currently, but overall it is still a very powerful and versatile deck that could certainly surprise a few at the World Championships. Then we have Ceruledge EX, which definitely lingers between Tier 3 and 4, but has overall more power than any of the other Tier 4 decks, so it felt bad placing it there. It can do a lot of damage. It gets upgraded by Air Balloon, preventing Revavroom from getting stuck in the active or forcing a Jet Energy to retreat, so the deck may yet have something to say for itself in this new format. And next, we have Armarouge Box. Thanks to Ethan's Ho EX providing the amazing energy acceleration, and Prism Energy being a much more versatile card to cover the colored costs of the various attackers than the outdated Luminous Energy in this deck. The combination of Iron Hands EX and Wellspring Ogerpon EX made Lugia V-Star a powerful threat, and with other techs such as Roaring Moon EX, Durant EX, Lilith Clefairy EX, and Reshiram EX to help cover other threats in the metagame, this versatile deck can be very scary to play against. But the full reliance on Armarouge to make the deck fully work is what keeps it in tier 3. Then we have Miraidon EX, with a new Sacrum providing a powerful late game attacker that the deck has sorely missed since the rotation of Raichu V, and Electric making a comeback for the Flaffy we used to play in it. The deck based on Electric Generator rather than Joltik has been seeing some play in the online tournament scene, and with good reason, as the threat of a turn 1 Iron Hands EX, one turn earlier than the Joltik box decks, is a very scary thought for any of the tier 1 decks dominating the metagame right now. Unfortunately, doing that is less reliable when you can't use your Forest Seal Stone to go fetch a double turbo energy anymore, so the deck feels like a watered down version of its previous dominating counterpart. And finally, the last deck of tier 3 is Cynthia's Garchomp EX. Nothing really gained by this deck other than Air Balloon and maybe Hilda. It still has a lot of synergy between the cards and is consistent with Gabite searching for other Cynthia's Pokemon each turn, and Garchomp itself either dishing out massive damage or drawing extra cards since the deck doesn't have a draw engine itself. Unfortunately, the lack of energy acceleration and other tier 1 decks like Raging Bolt or Gholdengo, which easily 1-KO Garchomp EX, keep it in check, and thus it isn't quite fully equipped to deal with the top tier decks of the metagame just yet. Heading into tier 2 now, we have some of the most consistent and reliable decks in the metagame that can go toe to toe against the ones at the top, but still have some glaring weaknesses against some of them that stops them from being even more powerful. First, we have the Evolutions deck. The deck had a lot of momentum heading into NAIC, and it managed to make it all the way into the top 16 there. The combination of Flareon, Sylveon, and Leafeon provide so much coverage in the metagame with their amazing typing, but also their powerful attacks, where Leafeon in theory covers Grimmsnarl and Charizard, and to some extent Dragapult with its healing. Sylveon provides coverage against all Dragapult decks, and a well-timed Angelite can be game ending. Flareon covers Gholdengo and provides energy acceleration for the rest of the deck. With the support of the Noctowl engine and the varied type coverage, this deck has the potential to overrun every deck. Perhaps it's time for Umbreon to return to the deck as well in order to help provide cover against the ever-present Gardevoir decks. Next, we have Joltik Box, a deck perceived as one of the simplest to play in the format, but even if that is true, it doesn't mean the deck is any less good. Its straightforward plan of rushing things with Iron Hands EX and chasing easy prizes on the bench with multiple gusting effects in the deck is great to take advantage of any opponent that doesn't have a perfect start. Pikachu EX, Iron Leaves EX, and Clefairy EX all offer backup potential to deal with higher HP Pokemon such as Gholdengo, Dragapult, Charizard, and Grimmsnarl. So overall, this deck can certainly cover all its bases quite well, and a single Arbin is usually all it needs to get going. Then we have Crustle. I'm sure if you're watching this and have been playing the ladder, you've come across this deck which tries to KO anything that threatens it, which, if we are honest, isn't much these days as most decks are based on powerful EX Pokemon and there aren't that many non-rulebox Pokemon going around at the moment. The ones that are around, like Chi-Yu in Charizard decks, Screamtail and Drifloon in Gardevoir Typhlosion itself, are almost auto losses for this deck. But it seems to have a pretty great matchup spread against most decks at the top. But the harsh Gardevoir matchup is one of the main reasons it is being held back. Next, we have Typhlosion. This deck is the one to get the biggest glow up since our last tier list, since it was a pretty limited deck with its damage output and couldn't quite duel with any of the top decks. However, the shift in the top decks, which now include Gholdengo, as well as the release of Brave Bangle to help push the damage output further for the deck, means now with that, and Victini, and Gravity Mountain, you can actually 1-KO many of the stage 2 threats from the top decks as a single prizer, which is basically the dream. Can Typhlosion sustain this newfound success at the World Championships though? I'm not sure many people will believe in the deck, but it certainly has become much better than in the Destined Rivals format. And the final deck in tier 2 is Charizard EX. After winning NAIC in seniors, it seems like Gabriel's list proved that the deck can still survive in this harsh environment, as despite a difficult Dragapult matchup, it can do quite well against other top decks like Gardevoir, Raging Bolt, and now Gholdengo. Grimmsnarl is also a bit of a nuisance, but that's where the Picnic Basket and Monkey Dory decks come in, which coincidentally also help a decent bit against Dragapult DX. The release of Tool Scrapper isn't great, as the main A-spec for this deck is usually Maximum Belt, but Tool Scrapper doesn't seem to be very popular these days still. And so now we arrive at Tier 1. Since our last video, there have been 3 new decks joining Tier 1. The pure Dragapult version with no Charizard or Dusknoir, which I had ranked in Tier 2, but towards amazing run at NAIC, showed that the deck is just as good as its counterparts, and thus all 3 Dragapult decks are considered Tier 1 right now. Next, we have Gardevoir EX with Jellicent EX, which plays differently enough than the non-Jellicent EX version of Gardevoir EX to be considered a separate archetype and another Tier 1 deck. And finally, we have Gholdengo EX, which got the most powerful upgrades in the new set. Genesect EX lets the deck get away with not running a TM Evo engine or any Ultra Balls at all, as a single Nest Ball now gets them 2 Gholdengo EX without any worries at all. This newfound space is now used on Herbaloons as well, which serve 2 purposes. First, they allow Gholdengo EX a lot of mobility which it didn't have before, and body plus cost into them was usually an effective way to try to buy time. But that is no longer the case with 3 or even 4 Herbaloons. And then it also makes it so that after a KO, you can send a Gholdengo EX with an Herbaloon, draw 2 cards with coin bonus in the active, and then retreat into another Gholdengo EX and get 2 more cards. That 1 or 2 extra cards each turn, and especially after an Iono or on first stamp, could be the difference between a win or a loss, so having access to even 1 extra card is amazing for this deck. With Energy Surge Pro letting the deck have explosive KOs and a relatively good matchup spread into many Tier 1 and Tier 2 decks, it's no surprise that Gholdengo EX is thriving now with all these new amazing upgrades. Next, we have fan favorite Raging Bolt EX. Despite Destined Rivals bringing 2 new cards which go against it in Watchtower and Shaman, the deck still managed to have an incredible run at NAIC. And with its raw strength and power which few decks can go toe to toe against, as well as many players directly qualifying to Worlds, thanks to it, I expect this deck to be a popular choice amongst Worlds competitors. It has grass typing support to help cover Charizard and Grimmsnarl, and of course Bellowing Thunder takes care of everything else. Fan Rotom and the non-EX Raging Bolt provide early game pressure, and thus this deck is one of the most well-rounded and powerful archetypes currently in the metagame. Then we have Grimmsnarl EX, which showed up big time at NAIC both in terms of popularity, but also in results, as Piper Lepine made it all the way to the top 8 with the deck and likely could have gone even further were it not for a bit of bad luck in her top 8 set against eventual champion Isaiah Bradner. Its powerful spread damage strategy with Frostlass and Monkey Dory, the threat of TM Devolution to wipe boards whilst under body's item lock, or simply a 320 HP dark type attacker doing big numbers and piling up damage on the bench, this deck's worst enemy is usually its own consistency, but overall it is quite powerful and can even work around the big grass weakness thanks to Monkey Dory spreading damage all over the board. With the rise of Jellicent and Gholdengo EX in the meta, with a new black and white set, I expect Grimmsnarl to be a top contender and deck choice for many at the World Championships. And now, we get to Dragapult EX, still at the top despite the Gardevoir threat, and in 3 different variants, solo, with Dusknoir, or with Charizard. In the end, all of them are Dragapult decks that have various other alternate options at their disposal. The Tord version is more disruptive, with double Monkey Dory and the possibility to buy time with Maractus. The Dusknoir version is very aggressive and tries to eliminate multiple targets at once before they even become threats with Dusclops and Counter Catcher, or it tries to utilize Dusknoir to increase the damage output of Dragapult in a single turn to reach for a KO. Finally, we have Charizard, which helps accelerate energy onto the board in order to have the possibility to power up a Dragapult out of the blue, as well as being a powerful dark type attacker against Gardevoir and offer a higher damage output than 200 in the later stages of any game. No matter which version you choose, Phantom Dive is still the main attack and Recon Directive is your main draw engine. But any of these versions are great choices in any metagame, and they all offer a chance at winning regardless of what matchup you're up against. Expect to see many Dragapult decks at the top of the world standings in a few weeks. And finally, we have the most dominant deck since rotation, Gardevoir EX. This deck continued its dominance into an AAC and now gains a new alternative partner in Jellicent EX heading into Worlds. Jellicent EX offers a more control-oriented playstyle, with both Frillish and Jellicent EX offering item lock for the duration of a whole game almost. And that means trouble for many decks relying on item cards to accelerate their turns. The NAIC winning list didn't use Drifloon whatsoever, but it did feature a Monkey Dory plus Gardevoir EX focus, so we could see that. or Drifloon variants, or Jellicent DX variants doing well at the World Championships. This is a deck that is heavily favored by many of the world's best players, and if the release of Grimmsnarl in Destined Rivals wasn't enough to persuade them to switch decks, it's unlikely anything in black and white will either, so this might finally be the year Gardevoir EX wins the World Championships, and coincidentally, this is its last chance to do so before it rotates out next year. The black and white set brings us exciting times ahead in the Pokemon TCG world, and we are now a few weeks away from the most prestigious tournament of the year where the best of the world will be crowned. Who do you have your bets on? Do you think there will be any big surprises like Ironthorn CX's run last year? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time. If you want to support the channel, you can use code tablemon to get 5% off at Potent Store for your online codes, 10% off for your sealed product at Flipside Gaming, and 20% off for your superfoods at Amaranthi. Or if you're looking to buy singles or sleeves, you can fill up your cart and close the tab, then click on the affiliate link in the description and check out. That way you can support the channel over at TCG Player, Card Market, and Dragon Shield. ¿Eres de México y necesitas cartas de Pokémon? Busca Hyperbeam Cards en Facebook e Instagram. Y si estás en Tijuana, búscalos en el local G18 y G11 en el centro comercial Otay.